When you lose your job, it is a catastrophe for you and your family, but it is apparently fantastic for the money-printing welfare queens on Wall Street. A few days ago, the Wall Street Journal published an article titled, unironically, quote, "The economic slowdown is finally here. Welcome it." In the article, they noted how jobs, consumer spending, and economic output are all crashing, and they conclude that that is all pretty super because maybe the Fed can cut rates now. In case you need a little reminder that the priorities on Wall Street are very much not the priorities of regular Americans. In raw numbers, it is pretty grim. GDP slowed by a third last quarter to barely above population growth. Job creation just dropped nearly by half in April from 315,000 to 175,000. Note, many of those are government jobs, quasi-government jobs in the welfare industrial complex, and of course the mountain of part-time jobs that are replacing actual 9-to-5s. Meanwhile, expectations for job availability, so how easy it is to find a job, just hit the lowest since 2011 when the American economy was still limping out of the 2008 crisis. What's leading the slowdown at the moment is services, with consumer confidence crashing amid fears about rising inflation and rising unemployment. Just last week, I mentioned how the low end is dropping out of consumer spending, with companies from McDonald's to Coke to Kraft, as in mac and cheese, reporting slumping sales even as Lamborghini breaks new sales records. In leisure and hospitality, which includes everything from McDonald's to Disney vacations, job creation crashed 90% last month to just 5,000 jobs. All of this, of course, driving wage growth down, falling from nearly 6% wage growth in 2022 to just over 3.5% at the moment. The journal notes this is a very welcome sign for the Fed, since the less you spend, the more the Fed can set aside for Washington to spend on unicorn farts, migrant welfare, who of course reduce wages even more, and more artillery shells for Ukraine. These low wages are so good, in fact, that the news sent Wall Street soaring and bond yields easing on hopes maybe the Fed can start cutting rates in time to help Joe Biden in November. Lower yields, of course, help crippled banks plug the billion-dollar holes in their assets, and they pay rich people. So good times all around. Shame about the lost jobs and pay cuts for the other 99% in flyover country. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. It is not normal that incoming recession, job losses, and falling wages are cheered on Wall Street. After all, a growing economy is supposedly what financial markets are made of. Of course, the reason is the 800-pound gorilla in America's economy, the Federal Reserve. And for them, bad news is good news. Because if the rest of us stop spending, if we can't afford McDonald's or don't have a job at all, it means the Fed can get back to subsidizing loans for the federal government, the Fed's own personal 800-pound gorilla, and of course for the rich and Wall Street who get their assets pumped. Then maybe someday down the line, it all trickles down to the middle and working class who, in the meantime, paid for it all with inflation. As for what comes next, the media apparently has its marching orders. Recession is good because anything that stands in the way of federal spending is bad for the regime, even if that means millions of Americans lose their jobs or can't afford a Happy Meal. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.